At some point, America decided that income isn't money. It's a background check. Because you don't just live here anymore. You qualify. You qualify to rent. You qualify to turn on the lights. You qualify to exist indoors without someone showing up with a clipboard and a face that says, "I'm not mad. I'm just here to document this." You don't pay rent. You prove you deserve walls. You don't pay for electricity. You maintain an ongoing relationship with the grid. Miss one payment, and suddenly your house feels very conditional. And if your income gets too low, people get weird. Not aggressive, not dramatic. They just start asking questions. So what do? Are you working right now? And this is temporary, right? Which is American for, how are you pulling this off? And should we be concerned? But here's the part nobody likes. All over the US, there are people living with almost no income, and nothing is going wrong. No disaster, no sad violin, no documentary narrator whispering, they survive against all odds. They wake up, they make coffee, they step outside, and nobody charges them for it. No rent, no power bill, no email that starts with "due to recent changes" and ends with you rage-canceling Spotify, even though you'll resubscribe in 3 days. When rent disappears, income stops panicking. When utilities disappear, income stops screaming. When nobody is billing you for being alive, income turns into a suggestion, which is extremely rude to the system, because we're supposed to believe that low income means failure, that if you're not exhausted, you're irresponsible, that if you're calm, you must be doing something illegal. Meanwhile, these people are growing food, making power, hauling water, and somehow not refreshing their bank app every morning like it owes them money. From the outside, it looks reckless. From the inside, it looks suspiciously peaceful. They're not broke. They're just not paying monthly fees to exist. And that's what really freaks everyone out. When most people hear almost no income, their brain immediately panics. They imagine disaster. They imagine a sad couch. They imagine someone eating canned beans while pretending this was always the plan. That's not what's happening here. Because there's a huge difference between having no money and not needing much money in the first place. Poverty is when you still have all the bills, rent, utilities, insurance, subscriptions you forgot to cancel in 2019, but none of the income to support them. That's not freedom. That's just stress, with a motivational quote taped on top. What we're talking about in this video is something else entirely. These are places where people remove the expensive parts of modern life on purpose. No rent because they own the land or park on it legally. No power bill because the sun already showed up and didn't ask for a credit card. No water bill because gravity still works and nobody's monetized rain yet. Once those costs disappear, income stops being a crisis. You don't need a career. You don't need a grind. You don't need a LinkedIn bio that says, "passionate about solutions." You need enough. Enough to replace a battery. Enough to fix the thing that breaks, because something will break. Enough to buy seeds, fuel, parts, and the one tool you swear will be the last one you ever need. That's why people in these places live on small pensions, seasonal work, part-time jobs, remote freelancing, or income that shows up when it feels like it. And somehow, life keeps working. Not because they're lucky, not because they found a loophole the government forgot about, but because the system they're living in doesn't charge them a monthly fee for existing. From the outside, it looks unstable. From the inside, it feels oddly calm. No surprise bills, no rate hikes, no emails politely informing you that your survival now costs more. So when you hear almost no income in This video, don't picture deprivation. Picture a life where money stopped yelling and finally learned how to whisper. Before we go any further, quick pause. Hit subscribe. Not because I need the numbers, not because YouTube threatened me, but because every time someone subscribes to this channel, a random HOA board member wakes up in a cold sweat with no idea why. A clipboard slips out of their hands. A meeting about fence height gets mysteriously postponed. Someone quietly deletes a rule that started with, visible structures must maintain neighborhood harmony. So if you enjoy videos about places where nobody asks what you're building, how much you're earning, or whether your shed fits the long-term vision of the community, subscribe. And if you don't, that's fine too. Just know there's a zoning office somewhere that would love to talk to you about your compost pile. All right, let's keep going. You'll notice something interesting about all the places in this video. They're not advertised. There's no commercial that starts with soft music and a smiling couple saying, "We moved here for the freedom." No billboards, no sponsored reels, no tourism board whispering, "Discover a simpler life." Because these places would be terrible for marketing. They don't scale, they don't sparkle, they don't come with a welcome packet or a community Facebook group arguing about trash cans. You can't sell a place where the main feature is, nobody cares what you're doing. There's no brochure for silence, no promo video for distance, no influencer code for, "Please leave me alone." And the moment too many people find out about a place like this, things change. Rules appear, fees appear, committees appear. Someone suddenly needs to take a look. So these places stay quiet on purpose. They don't invite attention. They don't ask to be understood. They just exist, patiently, waiting for the kind of people who aren't looking for an upgrade, but an exit. And now that you understand why they're invisible, we can finally talk about where they are. Let's start where the system gives up completely. Slab City. This is not a town. It's what happens when rent leaves the chat. Slab City sits in the California desert on the cracked concrete remains of an old military base. That's not symbolism. That's just literally what it is. No rent, no utilities, no property taxes, no monthly email reminding you that your existence is past due. People don't move to Slab City. They arrive and stop leaving. Homes here are made from whatever survived the last few decades. Retired RVs, school buses with strong personalities, wood pallets holding on for dear life, solar panels pointed directly at the sun like, "Please, we're counting on you." There's no power grid, so people build their own. There's no water system either. Water gets hauled in, which has a funny side effect. You suddenly become very emotionally attached to every drop. Income here is minimal, optional, or a distant memory. Some people live on small pensions, some on disability checks, some work seasonally and disappear again. Some just opted out so hard they forgot what day payday used to be. Now, very important. This is not comfort. This is not easy. This is not a life hack. Summer hits 120 degrees. Dust gets into things you didn't know could open. Nothing is convenient, and nothing is forgiving. That's why Slab City isn't a recommendation. It's a boundary marker. It shows what happens when rent disappears entirely, when bills stop arriving, when income becomes optional, but responsibility shows up uninvited. Slab City is the far edge of the map, and once you've seen that edge, every other place in this video suddenly feels a lot more reasonable. Next stop, somewhere slightly less on fire. If Slab City is where the system fully lets go, Quartzsite is where it shrugs and says, "Fine, but do it neatly." This is Western Arizona, flat desert, big sky, and a town that looks half-finished most of the year. Then winter happens, and suddenly the desert fills up. RVs roll in like migrating animals with solar panels. Satellite dishes pop up overnight. Generators hum politely, like everyone agreed not to be annoying about it. This isn't a secret. This isn't illegal. This is officially approved freedom. Just outside Quartzsite, the Bureau of Land Management runs long-term visitor areas. You pay a small permit fee, about what some people spend on streaming services they don't watch, and you're allowed to stay for months. No rent, no lease, no surprise market adjustment. You bring your house with you. You bring your power. You bring your water. And once those three things are handled, income relaxes immediately. Most people here aren't running away from anything. They're retirees on fixed incomes, seasonal workers, remote freelancers who realize their laptop works just as well when nobody's around. Life here runs on very simple rules. Sun equals electricity. Water equals planning. Shade equals status. There's no HOA measuring your lot. No neighbor reporting you for camping too confidently. No committee deciding whether your setup fits the community's aesthetic journey. You park. You live. You leave when the heat gets personal. Quartzsite works because it removes the most expensive part of modern life, housing. Without pretending the rest of reality disappears too. Things still break. You still need common sense. You still need to know when to leave. But you don't need a high income to justify your existence. After Slab City, this is where the idea clicks. Low-income off-grid living doesn't have to be extreme. Sometimes, it's just organized enough to be boring. And boring, it turns out, is very sustainable. After the desert, the map does something rude. It jumps north. No warning, no transition. Just cold air, and the sudden realization that the sun is no longer your main utility provider. Welcome to Valley County, Montana. This is the kind of place where people don't talk about minimalism because they're too busy carrying firewood. Out here, low income doesn't look rebellious. It looks practical. Land spreads out. Houses sit where they make sense, not where a planner with a laser pointer once imagined them. If something breaks, you fix it. Not because it's trendy, but because the nearest professional is a suggestion, not a guarantee. People heat with wood, grow what grows, hunt when it's legal, and plan their lives around winter instead of pretending it's optional. There's no obsession with appearances here, mostly because there's no audience. No one cares what your place looks like from the road, mainly because the road is far and nobody's on it, unless they meant to be. Income stays low because expenses never really show up. No rent checks, no HOA newsletters, no surprise fees for community improvements nobody asked for. You don't need much money when convenience isn't part of the deal. People here work seasonally, ranch jobs, trades, remote work that quietly happens somewhere between splitting logs and checking the weather. And when work slows down, life doesn't collapse. It just gets quieter. Of course, this place isn't pretending to be easy. Winters are long, stores are far. Help takes time. So you plan, you prepare. You don't rely on systems that might not feel like showing up. Valley County isn't about escaping the world. It's about stepping far enough away that money finally stops yelling at you. And once you've experienced that silence, the desert starts to feel very loud again. After Montana freezes your expectations solid, Arizona shows up like, relax. The sun's still doing most of the work. Apache County doesn't feel dramatic. It feels unfinished in a very useful way. You drive east, and things quietly loosen up. Cities disappear. Sidewalks give up. And suddenly the land stops pretending it has opinions about your life. This is unincorporated land, which sounds boring until you realize what it doesn't come with. No city council meetings about your shed. No neighborhood groups debating the emotional impact of your roof color. No one asking why your driveway looks temporary. People come here because the math finally stops fighting them. Land is cheap. Sun is reliable. Space is not a problem anyone's trying to solve. So life simplifies. Solar panels go up first, because priorities. Water gets hauled, stored, guarded like it's a personality trait. Gardens appear wherever the soil agrees to cooperate. Income drops, naturally. People work part-time, seasonally, online. Some take long breaks between jobs and nobody panics about it, because nothing is billing them in the meantime. Now, quick reality check. This isn't a free-for-all. There are building permits. There are rules. They're just reasonable. The kind designed to prevent actual disasters, not to police vibes. No one is measuring your fence height. No one is showing up because your structure raised questions. No one cares if your house looks finished, as long as it isn't falling on someone else. Apache County sits right in the middle of the scale. Not extreme like Slab City, not temporary like Quartzsite, not theoretical like a Pinterest board. Just land where autonomy is possible without turning your life into a constant argument. It's where low-income living stops being a statement and quietly becomes normal. And once that feels normal, everything else starts to feel very expensive. Eureka County is what happens when paperwork simply doesn't show up. Not because it was abolished, not because someone protested. It just never really arrived. This is central Nevada, wide, dry, and so spread out that the land itself seems mildly confused when you stop the car. Towns are small, distances are long, and nobody is in a hurry to tell you what you should be doing, which turns out to be the whole point. Here's the part that usually makes people blink. There are no residential building permits required at the county level. No applications, no waiting period, no friendly email asking for one more document. You own land, you build on it. That's the system. People don't come here to make a statement. They come because friction disappears. Cabins go up quietly. Solar systems get installed without a philosophical discussion about aesthetics. Water gets hauled or pulled from wells without anyone scheduling a meeting about it. Income drops naturally when the barriers fall. You don't need much money when nobody is charging you to exist on your own property. That doesn't mean it's easy. Nevada is dry. Mistakes aren't cute here, they're educational. The landscape does not care about your learning curve, so people plan. They build slowly. They fix things themselves instead of Googling, who is responsible for this? You'll find retirees living on modest savings, seasonal workers, remote workers who realized the internet doesn't care where you are as long as you stop asking it to. What you won't find is pressure. No zoning map telling you what your land's future should look like. No inspector appearing because your structure raised questions. No timeline for becoming acceptable. Eureka County isn't famous because there's nothing to sell. No views, no vibe, no lifestyle package. Just space, silence, and a legal environment that quietly stays out of the way. It's not dramatic freedom, it's administrative freedom. And for people trying to live with almost no income, that turns out to be incredibly effective. Taos is where off-grid stops looking like an accident and starts looking like someone actually read the instructions. This isn't, we parked an RV and hoped for the best. This is architecture with opinions. Just outside town, you'll find earthships, homes built from dirt, glass, tires, and the quiet belief that paying utility bills forever might not be a personality trait. These houses collect rainwater. They generate their own electricity. They regulate temperature using physics instead of a thermostat that screams every time you touch it. They grow food inside the house, which sounds dramatic until you realize it mostly means the lettuce lives closer to the couch. Nothing here is improvised. These homes are designed, engineered, tested, which is why income quietly steps back. When electricity is free, water shows up on the roof, and food grows 6 feet from your kitchen, money stops being urgent. People here aren't trying something out. They committed. Some work part-time, some freelance, some live on modest savings or small pensions. No one's panicking about missing a paycheck because nothing critical is waiting to punish them for it. Now, important clarification. Because the internet gets weird, this isn't chaos. Taos County has rules. Earthships are legal because they were argued over, inspected, and proven to work. You can't just stack tires and declare independence. You have to do it properly. Which is the funny part. This is freedom with paperwork. But the paperwork already happened. The desert still has opinions. Winters get cold. Repairs are your responsibility. But there are no rate hikes, no surprise outages, no emails explaining why your bill went up due to circumstances. Taos shows what happens when autonomy is built into the walls. Low income isn't a sacrifice here. It's a side effect. Not because people have less, but because their houses stopped charging them rent for existing. Esmeralda County is what happens when even the map gives up trying. This is Nevada in its purest form, dry, empty, and completely uninterested in your plans. It's one of the least populated counties in the entire United States, which immediately solves a lot of problems. No crowds, no neighbors, no one accidentally forming a committee. Out here, off-grid isn't a lifestyle choice. It's just the default setting. There isn't much infrastructure because nobody bothered building it. And because there isn't much infrastructure, there also aren't many bills looking for you. People live far apart, very far apart, far enough that privacy stops being a feature and becomes geography. Homes are simple, cabins, trailers, small builds that exist because someone needed shelter, not because they wanted a Pinterest reveal. Solar handles power. Water gets hauled or pulled from wells. Food is planned, not ordered. Income stays low because there's nothing aggressively demanding it. No rent checks. No utility companies testing your emotional stability. No monthly fees for services you didn't ask for and don't use. This doesn't mean no rules. It means no interest. Nobody is driving an hour into the desert to ask why your shed looks unfinished. Nobody is reviewing your setup for visual harmony, mostly because there is no visual and no harmony, just land. The trade-off is obvious. Isolation is real. Mistakes are expensive. If something breaks, help is a concept, not a guarantee. So people out here are prepared. They think ahead. They don't assume the system will catch them if they fall. Esmeralda County isn't freedom with benefits. It's freedom with silence. And once you experience that level of quiet, the idea of paying thousands of dollars a month to live closer to other people's opinions starts to feel a little strange. Next up, a place where autonomy comes with trees. Greenlee County is what happens when Arizona suddenly decides to grow trees. After all the desert, this place feels like a plot twist. Mountains show up. Water exists. Shade becomes a real thing instead of a rumor. And somehow, the rules relax even more. Greenlee is one of those rare counties where residential building codes never really took over. Not because someone made a bold freedom statement, but because nobody felt the need to complicate things. You own land. You build a place to live. End of discussion. No binder full of design guidelines. No character of the community speech. No suggestion that your house should emotionally reflect the surrounding hills. People come here because everything lines up. Land is affordable. Water is available. Firewood grows vertically. Solar works because Arizona never forgets to be Arizona. So life gets reasonable. People build small homes, cabins, places that make sense for the weather instead of Instagram. Gardens actually work here, not in a theoretically with enough effort way, but in a yes, that's food way. Chickens show up, tools multiply, income drops without drama. People work locally, remotely, seasonally. Some work less simply because nothing is charging them for not working. And that's the dangerous part. When your basics are handled, shelter, power, water, food, money loses its ability to scare you. Now this isn't chaos. There are laws. There are boundaries. They're just focused on actual problems, like not burning the forest down or building something that falls over. No one is checking your porch railings. No one is measuring your roof pitch. No one cares if your house fits the vision. Greenlee County is one of those places that quietly ruins you. Because once you realize how calm life can be when nature does most of the work and the government mostly leaves you alone, paying thousands a month to live closer to traffic starts to feel deeply unnecessary and slightly offensive. Next stop, back to New Mexico, but quieter this time. Socorro County is what happens when New Mexico decides to mind its own business. No drama, no big promises, just a lot of land quietly doing nothing, which, as it turns out, is very helpful. This is high desert, wide open, the kind of place where the horizon feels personal. People don't move here for excitement. They move here because nothing interferes. Land is cheap. Neighbors are optional. And the local government has mastered the rare art of not hovering. Off-grid living here isn't extreme. It's casual. Solar panels go up without ceremony. Water gets hauled or pulled from wells. Homes are simple, practical, and very uninterested in impressing anyone. Income stays low because there's no pressure to keep it high. People work seasonally, remote jobs, odd projects that come and go. Nobody's building a career path. They're building a life that doesn't collapse if work slows down for a month. Now yes, before anyone writes an email, New Mexico technically has state-level building rules. But out here, outside the towns, enforcement feels more like a suggestion than a personality trait. As long as you're not creating a disaster, no one's knocking on your door asking for updates. And that's why Socorro works. It's not trying to be the most free. It's not trying to prove anything. It just quietly removes friction. No HOAs, no surprise fees, no sense that someone's monitoring your lifestyle choices for long-term compatibility. The trade-off is honesty. The sun is strong. Distances are real. If something breaks, it's your problem. But that's also the appeal. Because when life is simple and predictable, you don't need much money to manage it. Socorro County doesn't feel radical. It feels sane. And after everything we've covered so far, that might be the most rebellious thing of all. Next, the final stop, where money becomes almost completely irrelevant and nature stops pretending to be polite. Wrangell St. Elias is where money finally admits defeat, not dramatically, not with a speech. It just quietly realizes it's no longer in charge. This is Alaska, real Alaska, not the cruise ship version with gift shops and inspirational mugs. This is the kind of place where Google Maps hesitates before answering. People here don't live off-grid as a lifestyle choice. They live off-grid because what exactly would you connect to? There are no power lines waiting for you, no water hookups pretending to exist, no services wondering if you're interested in a bundle. You bring everything, or you learn how to get it. Electricity comes from generators, solar, sometimes both. Water comes from snow, rivers, planning, and respect. Food comes from fishing, hunting, growing what you can, and knowing when not to argue with nature. This is a subsistence lifestyle, which sounds poetic until you realize it mostly means you are very involved in your own survival. Income here is minimal because there's almost nothing to spend it on. No rent, no utilities, no impulse purchases because the nearest store is a logistical decision. People work seasonally, remote jobs, odd contracts that fit around weather and daylight. Some don't work much at all because once your basics are handled, money becomes optional. Now let's be clear, this is not easy. This is not cozy. This is not something you try because you watched one video and felt inspired. Winter is serious. Mistakes are permanent. Help is far away and not always impressed by your situation. But this is the end of the scale. The place where income matters the least, not because life is cheap, but because life is direct. No middlemen, no monthly fees, no system gently reminding you that you owe it something. Wrangell St. Elias isn't freedom with convenience, it's freedom with consequences. And once you understand that, every other place in this video suddenly feels very reasonable. By now, one thing should be very clear. These people aren't living with almost no income because they're irresponsible. They're living with almost no income because income stopped being the thing holding their life together. Somewhere along the way, we were taught that money is stability, that without a paycheck, everything falls apart, that calm only exists if it's sponsored by direct deposit. And sure, that's true when your entire life is rented, when your house isn't yours, when your power can be turned off remotely, when your water, heat, and food all come with late fees and customer support music. In that system, income isn't optional, it's life support. But what you've just seen is a different equation. When housing stops being a product, when energy stops being a subscription, when food comes from land instead of apps, money loses its volume. It doesn't disappear, it just stops shouting. People still work, they still plan, they still deal with problems. Because problems are loyal like that. But they're not running on fear. They're not one missed paycheck away from panic. They're not refreshing their bank app like it owes them an explanation. Low income, in these places, isn't a failure. It's a side effect of removing friction, a side effect of designing life around needs instead of invoices, a side effect of not outsourcing survival to systems that raise prices due to circumstances. And that's why this idea makes so many people uncomfortable. Because once you see that it's possible to live calmly, legally, and autonomously with very little money, it becomes harder to believe that exhaustion is mandatory, that stress is normal, that paying thousands a month to exist near traffic and opinions is just how life works. These places aren't for everyone. They're not easy, they're not convenient, and they definitely don't come with customer service. But they ask a dangerous question. What if the problem isn't that people don't earn enough, but that modern life charges too much for permission? And once that question is asked, it doesn't really go away. None of these places are perfect. They're far. They're quiet. They expect you to know what you're doing or learn fast. But they all prove the same thing. Living with almost no income isn't magic. It's math. Remove rent, remove bills, remove people whose job is to monitor your lifestyle, and suddenly, money stops being the main character. Not gone, just demoted. So no, this isn't about running away. It's about what happens when life stops charging admission. And once you see that, going back to paying monthly fees for permission starts to feel a little strange and very expensive. See you in the next one.